Hey everyone, my name is Max and I'm the Backyard Astro Kiwi. Today I'm going to be talking about my first ever telescope purchase, the do's and don'ts and what I would have done differently. So my first telescope purchase was a Newtonian reflector. This means that the light comes in through the front end here, hits the mirror at the back, comes back up to the secondary mirror and then straight out through where the eyepiece would be just here. So this telescope has a 5-inch mirror at the back, which gives it a 900mm focal length, which is quite a bit of zoom for a telescope that's not super sturdy. Any changes with the focus, which you would have seen in my live stream, would actually throw this telescope right off its target. Any movements, any slight breezes or anything. So it was quite a challenge to use this telescope, and is still a challenge to me. So the mount we have here is an equatorial mount. This tracks the Earth's rotation and stops the rotation in your images as well. The other type of mount you can have is an alt-azimuth mount. This tracks the Earth's rotation, but it allows for image rotation. Those are usually only good for planetary photography or visual astronomy. The last part of this kit is the tripod. You always want the most robust tripod you can possibly buy. Extremely heavy is usually better, just because it stops all the vibrations and anything that could make your images move a little bit. So why wasn't this a good choice for my first mount? Equatorial mounts are not as easy as just pointing at the target and you have your target in view. They're on two slightly different axes that makes it a little bit more tricky to move around. So as a beginner I found that very frustrating to get around that learning curve. Secondly, a cheap equatorial mount like this is actually extremely hard to move. There is a motor on this, but nothing's computerized. It's not a go-to mount, as we say, which means that you type in the coordinates into your hand controller and it will go to the target. This requires full manual movement. So you would unlock the little clutches here and then move the mount accordingly. It's also not very stable. It's pretty flimsy, and for the same price you could probably buy a Dobsonian, and Dobsonians are a lot easier to use. You just drag them to wherever you want to shoot or wherever you want to look through and they just work. So a Dobsonian a child could pick up in an afternoon, point it at the target they want to see, and you'd be able to see the target. It's extremely easy. Whereas these take weeks and weeks of learning, especially when you buy a cheaper one like this that's got its own little quirks to it. So the most important thing you're going to ask yourself before going and buying a telescope is, are you going to be doing visual astronomy or are you going to be doing astrophotography? That is something I didn't consider when purchasing this. Even though I was a photographer at the time, I never expected to stick a camera onto this telescope for whatever reason I decided to. But when you're using a camera like a DSLR, which the sensor's sitting, a good distance away from where you would gain focus, you can't get focus anymore. So this telescope here, for instance, you cannot get focus with a DSLR. So I managed to get the planetary camera working through this, as you see from my early attempts at photographing the planets, and that's because it has very little back focus required to use it. It's just basically like an eyepiece. So what I would have done better, I would have actually purchased a Dobsonian if I'd known at the time, just because I could have done my planetary photography. It's much easier to learn as a telescope in general, and I could have focused on the important things that a beginner should be focusing on. With this telescope I spent many frustrated nights trying to get things aligned. As you guys might have seen in my live stream, even now after a year's experience, it takes me, like 35 minutes to get this thing onto a target like Venus, and to get it tracking properly, and it's an absolute nightmare. A Dobsonian, I could have just dragged it across to Venus and been shooting within 2 minutes. So yeah, as a beginner, Dobsonian is definitely better. If you want to do photography through a Dobsonian, you can use planetary cameras. So you can get planetary nebula or planets themselves, moon photography as well, so that's all quite cool. If you want to do deep space photography, well, when I get my mount back from repairs from me having a few issues with it, you'll get to see how that all works. But for now I thought I'd show you the telescope I purchased at the start of my hobby and why I wouldn't have purchased it now if I'd known what I've just told you. Oh boy, standing in front of a camera for the first time. Well, I suppose I do stream a little bit, but to talk about this hobby with anyone that I meet, but talking into a camera is much harder. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Everything went wrong. A lot of stuff went wrong when I was using these telescopes. Every telescope I ever used had problems. It's also part of the learning experience. experience. So the mount you see here is an equatorial, which is great for visuals. This thing here is an equatorial mount.